All right. Today we're jumping into a really cool idea from urban geography that helps explain why some cities become absolute giants that just tower over all the others. We're talking about the law of the Primate City.
So let's get right into it. We're going to kick things off by looking at a city that's so dominant it's almost hard to wrap your head around. And it brings up a really big question.
Yeah, just mull that over for a second. In some countries, one single city isn't just the biggest. It's like a universe unto itself. It's got pretty much all of the country's cultural, economic, and political gravity. So how on earth does that happen?
Okay, to really get a feel for the scale we're talking about here, check out this number, 40 times. This is not a small gap. We're talking about a level of dominance that completely warps the shape of a country. But 40 times what?
Yep, that's the one. Bangkok, the capital of Thailand, is about 40 times bigger than the country's second largest city. It's often pointed to as the most extreme example of what we're talking about today. I mean, this isn't just a big city. It's in a totally different league.
So you might be thinking, okay, Bangkok is a wild outlier, right? A total fluke. Well, not really. It actually turns out this is a pretty well-known pattern. It even has a name and a whole history behind it. So let's wind the clock back to 1939. You've got this geographer, Mark Jefferson, and he's poring over maps and population data. And he starts to see this pattern pop up again and again. He's the one who gave it its name, the law of the Primate City, to describe what he was seeing. So here's the key thing to get. A primate city isn't just the biggest kid on the block. It has to be way, way bigger and more influential. We're talking usually at least twice the size of the next city in line. It just completely dominates the whole urban scene.
You know, these cities, they basically become these giant magnets. For one, they're almost always the national capital, so all the political power is right there. But then they also become the center of finance, the place where all the culture happens, and the main hub for every road, railway, and airport. So with all that going on, where do you think everyone goes looking for a job or a better life? Yep, right there.
Okay, so that naturally leads to the next big question, right? Why does this happen in some countries and not in others? Well, it turns out there's kind of a recipe for cooking up one of these urban giants.
All right, let's break down this recipe. First, you often start with a super centralized government, where all the big decisions are made in the capital. Then, you stir in a colonial history. This is a big one. A colonial power often builds up just one single port city for all its trade and administration and kind of ignores the rest of the country. Third, you mix in an economy that's really dependent on agriculture. That pushes people from rural areas into that one big city to find other kinds of work. And finally, you see this pattern most often in countries that aren't huge, geographically speaking. It just makes it easier for one city to become the center of everything.
And this quote really nails the dynamic, doesn't it? All those ingredients, they create this gravitational pull. The capital just gets bigger and bigger, and it does that by pulling in resources, money, and talented people from everywhere else in the country. The other regions just can't keep up.
Okay, so we've got the theory down. But here's the cool part. Once you know what you're looking for, you start seeing these primate cities everywhere. This isn't just some dusty old geography concept. It's a real, global thing.
Just take a look at some of these famous examples. Over in the UK, London is just massive compared to the next biggest city, Birmingham. In France, I mean, come on, everything revolves around Paris. And you see the exact same thing with Mexico City in Mexico and Seoul in South Korea. These are all textbook primate cities.
And this isn't just a European or Asian thing, not by a long shot. We see it all over the globe. Head down to South America, and you'll find cities like Lima in Peru and Buenos Aires in Argentina playing that same super dominant role. It's a model of development that has shaped countries on pretty much every continent.
All right, so we get what a primate city is, and we've got a pretty good idea of why they pop up. But so what? What does it actually mean for a country when one city holds all the cards? What are the ripple effects?
Well, it's really a double-edged sword. On the one hand, cramming all that economic power and energy into one spot can be a fantastic engine for the whole country's growth. But, on the other hand, it can create some serious inequality. You get a brain drain from other regions, and the primate city itself gets put under incredible strain. Think about housing, traffic, you name it.
And it's really important to remember, this isn't the only way for a country's cities to be organized. There's an alternative, and it's often called the rank-size rule. Think about places like the United States or Germany. There, the second biggest city is about half the size of the largest. The third biggest is about a third, and so on. It creates this much more balanced, predictable ladder of cities, where no single one has all the power. And that really leaves us with a big, juicy question to chew on. Is this model, this single, all-powerful city, is it an efficient engine for a nation's growth? Or is it a fundamental flaw in its design that just creates imbalance? Is it a bug, or is it a feature? Definitely something to think about.